The massive screen in the United Earth Space Command headquarters showed the alien ship for the first time. Everyone in the room stood frozen, eyes wide and mouths open. Everyone except John Miller, who quietly moved his mop across the floor. In the back of the room, John was not supposed to be there for this historic moment. Janitors were not invited to watch humanity's first contact with an alien race. But John had a way of becoming invisible when he wanted to. He wore his gray uniform, kept his head down, and people's eyes just slid past him. The alien ship hung in space like a twisted metal flower. It was beautiful and strange, with curves that seemed impossible. It was at least 20 times bigger than Earth's largest spaceship. "They're sending a message," said Dr. Alan Wright, the lead scientist. His voice shook a little, the room filled with a strange humming sound. Then words came through the speakers in perfect English. "People of Earth, we are the Zarlaxian Empire. We have watched your world for some time. We wish to meet with your leaders and share knowledge. We come in peace." The room erupted in excited talk. General Susan Rogers, the commander of Earth's Space Forces, raised her hand for quiet. "Send the welcome message we prepared," she ordered. John watched everything from his corner. While others saw only the excitement of first contact, John noticed other things. The alien ship's weapon systems were powered up, though not aimed at Earth. The message was too perfect, too practiced. And there was something in the tone that bothered him. 3 days later, the Zarlaxians sent a smaller ship. To Earth, it landed at the Space Center, and out came 6 aliens. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but were taller, with blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. They wore shimmering suits that seemed to change color with every movement. John watched the broadcast on a small screen in the janitor's closet. The head alien called himself Ambassador Krell. He spoke with a deep, smooth voice that made John's skin crawl. "We request a diplomatic summit with your best minds," Ambassador Krell said. "We have much to share with Earth." General Rogers was put in charge of the summit. She chose 20 of Earth's top scientists, military leaders, and diplomats to meet with the aliens. John listened to her making calls from his spot outside her office, where he was supposedly cleaning the windows. The summit was set up in the UESC's main conference room. John made sure he was assigned to clean that area. As he dusted and swept, he listened to the aliens talk. They spoke of trade, of sharing technology, of a bright future together. Everyone seemed excited and happy, but John saw things others missed. The way the aliens looked at humans when they thought no one was watching. The small lies in their stories about their homeworld. The careful way they asked about Earth's resources. After a week of meetings, John couldn't stay quiet anymore. He saw a pattern in the aliens' words that reminded him of something he couldn't quite place. He waited until there was a break in the meetings, then approached Dr. Wright. "Sir, I've been listening to the aliens, and I think—" "Who are you?" Dr. Wright looked annoyed. "I'm John, sir. I clean the rooms here. But I've noticed something about the way the aliens talk." Ambassador Krell walked up behind them. He was almost 7 feet tall and looked down at John with those dark eyes. "What is this?" the alien asked. His voice was cold now. "Just the cleaning staff, Ambassador," Dr. Wright said quickly. "Pay him no mind." "You allow your servants to listen to diplomatic talks?" Krell asked. "He's not a servant," Dr. Wright said, looking uncomfortable. "He's a maintenance worker." Krell made a sound like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "On our world, we do. Not let the nobodies hear important matters, they clean. That is all." John stood straighter. "Sir, I believe the translation system might be— It speaks to me?" Krell looked shocked. He turned to the other aliens who had gathered around. They made clicking sounds that their translators didn't catch. One of the other aliens, smaller than Krell, pointed at John. "The cleaning human thinks it has something to say to the ambassador of the mighty Zarlaxian Empire." They all made the laughing sound now. John felt his face grow hot. General Rogers walked into the room. "What's happening here?" "General," Dr. Wright said quickly, "this janitor was trying to talk to the ambassador about the negotiations." Rogers looked at John with sharp eyes. "Is that so?" John stood at attention, an old habit from years ago. Ma'am, I've observed some concerning patterns in the Zarlaxians' communication. Enough, Krell said. We did not come to speak with your cleaning humans. If Earth wishes to be taken seriously, you will send your real representatives. To us, the aliens walked away, still making their clicking laugh sounds. Dr. Wright gave John an angry look and followed them. General Rogers stayed behind. She studied John's face for a long moment. What's your name? She asked. John Miller, ma'am. Get back to work, Miller. And stop bothering our guests. Her voice was firm, but there was something in her eyes that didn't match her harsh words. Yes, ma'am, John said. He picked up his mop and went back to cleaning. That night, John sat alone in his small apartment. The walls were bare except for one picture. John in a military uniform standing with 3 other men. Their faces were happy, but their eyes told a different story. John opened his laptop and began typing. He wrote down everything he had heard the aliens say. He noted their body language, the patterns in their speech, the small contradictions in their stories. He worked until sunrise, piecing together a puzzle no one else seemed to see. The next day, John was back at work, mop in hand. The aliens ignored him completely now. The Earth representatives walked past him as if he were invisible, but John kept watching, kept listening, kept taking notes in his small notebook when no one was looking, and one person did notice him. General Rogers watched John from across the room. She saw how his eyes followed the aliens, how he wrote in his notebook, how he stood with the straight back of someone who had served. She made a note to check his file when the day's meetings were done. John didn't know it yet, but his days of being a nobody were coming to an end. The truth he was uncovering would soon change everything, and the aliens who laughed at the cleaning human would learn that on Earth, appearances could be very deceiving. General Susan Rogers sat in her office late that night, staring at the computer screen. The file on John Miller was open in front of her. What she read made her sit up straight. John Miller. Age 36, former captain in military intelligence. Special. Focus on communication patterns and deception detection. Decorated twice for operations that remain classified. Honorably discharged 3 years ago after an incident in Nigeria. That left 3 of his team members dead. The report noted he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. He had requested a simple job away from responsibility. The janitor position at UESC headquarters had been perfect. No one would look twice at him there. Well, I'm looking now, Susan said to the empty room. The next morning, the talks with the Zarlaxians continued. Ambassador Krell was asking for access to Earth's mineral deposits, especially in areas rich with rare Earth elements. These materials are of little use to humans in their raw form, Krell said smoothly. But we can show you how to use them properly. This will benefit both our peoples. John was cleaning the windows again, moving slowly to hear every word. He had spent most of the night studying recordings of the aliens' speech patterns. Something about their words reminded him of interrogation. Techniques he had once studied. Susan watched John from the corner of her eye. Now that she knew who he was, she could see the intelligence in his eyes, the careful way he positioned himself to hear everything. When the meeting broke for lunch, Susan approached John. The windows seem particularly dirty today, Miller, she said loudly. Then she added in a whisper, my office. 10 minutes. John nodded slightly and continued cleaning. 10 minutes later, John knocked on the general's door. Come in, Susan called. John entered and stood at attention despite his janitor's uniform. At ease, Captain, Susan said. John's eyes widened. Not a captain anymore, ma'am? Once a captain, always a captain. Have a seat. She pointed to the chair across from her desk. I read your file last night. John sat down stiffly. I prefer to leave the past in the past, General. And I prefer to know when I have a skilled intelligence officer mopping my floors. Susan leaned forward. You've been watching our visitors closely. Why? John was quiet for a moment. Then he said, they remind me of someone I once interrogated. A warlord who smiled while he lied. His words said one thing, but his meaning was something else entirely. Go on. The Zarlaxians use specific speech patterns. They make statements that seem like offers but are actually demands. They ask questions that force us to accept their assumptions. John's voice grew stronger as he spoke. And they're gathering information about us while sharing very little about themselves. Susan nodded. I felt something was off, but couldn't put my finger on it. There's more, John said. I've been studying their language in my spare time. The translation system they gave us isn't quite right. It softens their demands and makes their questions seem more innocent than they are. How would you know their language? Susan asked. John looked down. After I left the service, I needed something to focus on. When the first alien broadcasts reached Earth 6 months ago, I started learning their language from the public transmissions. It kept my mind busy. Susan sat back in her chair, studying John's face. You think they're lying to us? I think they want something they're not telling us about, John replied. And I don't think they see us as equals. Susan opened a drawer and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the desk. This is a secure recorder. I want you to continue your observations, record everything you notice. Bring it to me each night. She paused. But keep cleaning those floors. For now, your cover stays in place. John nodded and took the recorder. Yes, ma'am. For the next week, John continued his janitorial duties, but now he had a purpose beyond just listening. He recorded everything he noticed about the aliens. The way Ambassador Krell always stood taller when making demands. The way the smaller alien, who called himself Vex, touched his neck ring when lying. The private conversations they had when they thought no humans were nearby. At night, John would meet with Susan in her office. They would go over his recordings and notes. Susan brought in Dr. Beth Taylor, a linguist she trusted, to help them understand the aliens' true language. This is incredible, Dr. Taylor said after 3 days. The translation they gave us misses crucial tone markers. What sounds like we request in the translation is actually closer to we require in their real language. Just as I suspected, John said. They're not here to make friends. Meanwhile, the negotiations were moving quickly. The Zarlaxians had offered medical technology that could cure several human diseases. In exchange, they wanted mining rights on Earth and access to the polar regions. Earth's representatives were eager to accept. We need more time, Susan told the president during a secure call. Something isn't right about their offers. The world is watching, General, the president replied. People are excited about alien cures for cancer. I can't delay without a good reason. I'm working on getting you that reason, sir, Susan said. That night, John stayed late at headquarters. Most of the staff had gone home, but the Zarlaxian ship had sent down a new delegation member. John wanted to observe this new alien. The new arrival was called Drex, and he was clearly higher ranked than Krell. The other aliens bowed slightly when he entered. John pretended to empty trash cans while watching. Drex spoke quickly in their language, not using the translators. John understood enough to freeze in place. The humans suspect nothing, Drex said. The resource extraction can begin once the treaty is signed. Their weapons are primitive. If they resist when they discover the truth, we will simply take what we need. John carefully backed away, trying to reach the door without being noticed. But his cart bumped against a chair. The aliens turned as one. The cleaning human, Krell said in English. What are you doing here so late? John lowered his eyes. Just, finishing my work, sir. Drex stepped forward. He was even taller than Krell, with strange markings on his face. He spoke in their language to Krell. Does this small creature understand our speech? Impossible, Krell replied in the same language. It is a nobody. It cleans floors. Drex approached John and switched to English. You, human, what did you hear? Nothing, sir, John said. I don't understand your language. Drex stared at John with those large, dark eyes. John kept his face blank, the way he had been trained long ago. Show nothing. Feel nothing. Finally, Drex turned away. Remove it from this area. I don't want servants present during our discussions. A human security guard came and escorted John. Out, as soon as he was alone, John pulled out his secure phone and called Susan. "General, we have a problem," he said. "I just heard them talking. This isn't a diplomatic mission. It's preparation for an invasion." General Susan Rogers called an emergency meeting at her private home at midnight. She didn't use official channels. Instead, she sent trusted officers to bring 3 people: Dr. Beth Taylor, the linguist, Frank Nelson, her second-in-command, and John Miller. They gathered in Susan's basement, which was secure against any listening devices. John sat uncomfortably in his clean jeans and t-shirt instead of his janitor uniform. He felt exposed. "Tell them what you heard," Susan said too. John repeated the conversation between the aliens. Dr. Taylor took notes, filling in the parts of the alien language John hadn't fully understood. "They said resource extraction and not mining agreement?" Frank asked. "Yes," John said. "And Drex said their weapons are ready if humans resist." Frank shook his head. "We can't take the word of a janitor over an alien ambassador," John said. Nothing. He was used to being dismissed. "He's not just a janitor," Susan said firmly. "Captain Miller was one of our best intelligence officers before his discharge." "Was being the key word," Frank said. "I need more than what you overheard," Susan told John, ignoring Frank. "I need proof to take to the president." "I think I know how to get it," Dr. Taylor said. "The aliens gave us their translation software to study. I've been analyzing it with my team. There's a section of code that seems to deliberately mistranslate certain words to make them sound less threatening." "Can you prove that?" Susan asked. "Yes, but I need help. Someone who understands both their language and computer code." Dr. Taylor looked at John. "Can you code, Captain Miller?" "Yes," John said. "It was part of my training." "Good, we'll work together tonight. If we can prove their translation system is deliberately deceiving us, that's a start." John and Dr. Taylor worked through the night in her university lab. They found exactly what they suspected. The translation software changed words, like demand to request and weapons to tools. "This is clever," John said, pointing to a section of code. "It doesn't just change words. It changes the entire tone of their speech to sound more friendly." By morning, they had their proof. They took it to Susan, who immediately requested a meeting with the president. The president listened to their findings in his office. He looked tired and worried. "This is concerning," he said, "but not proof of hostile intent. Maybe their language is just different from ours." "Sir," John spoke. I found something else." He handed the president a tablet. "These are transmissions from the Zarlaxian ship to their homeworld. They're encrypted, but I recognize the pattern from a system I once studied." The president looked at Susan. "He broke their encryption?" "Captain Miller has special skills," Susan said. "The messages talk about 3 other worlds they've visited," John continued. "They followed the same pattern each time. Friendly contact, technology offers, resource agreements. Then they took everything of value and left the planets damaged. 2 of the species tried to fight back. They don't exist anymore." The president's face paled. "If this is true—" "There's more," John said. "Tomorrow they plan to add something to our water supply during the celebration dinner. They call it compliance compound. It makes people easier to control." The president stood up. "I'm canceling the treaty signing." "No, sir," Susan said quickly. "If we show that we know their plans, we lose our advantage. We need to play along. But be ready. What do you suggest?" the president asked. "Let me handle the dinner tomorrow," Susan said. "And I need Captain Miller to be there, not as a janitor, but as part of our team." The president looked at John for a long moment. "Ken, I trust you, Captain?" "Yes, sir," John said. "I've served this country and this planet my entire adult life. That didn't change when I picked up a mop." The next day, preparations for the celebration dinner were underway. The Zarlaxians had requested to bring their own chefs to prepare special dishes as a sign of friendship. Susan made sure human security personnel watched every step of the food preparation. John spent the day with Dr. Taylor, practicing the correct pronunciation of key Zarlaxian phrases. He would only get one chance to use them. An hour before the dinner, Susan found John in a small office, staring at his old military uniform that had been brought from storage. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "No," John said honestly. "I left this life behind for a reason, General." "I know about Nigeria," Susan said softly. "I know you blame yourself for those deaths." John looked away. "I missed the signs. I was the communication expert, and I missed the signs that the warlord was setting a trap. 3 good men died because I failed. And how many will die if you—" "Fail now?" Susan asked. "The entire planet is at risk." John straightened his shoulders. "I won't fail this time." He put on the uniform. It felt strange after 3 years. The ribbons and medals seemed to belong to someone else. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the soldier looking back. Susan watched him. "Welcome back, Captain Miller." The grand hall was filled with world leaders, scientists, and military personnel. The Zarlaxian delegation sat at the main table, with Ambassador Krell and Commander Drex in the positions of honor. Susan entered with her team. John walked behind her, wearing his full dress uniform. The medals caught the light. Krell noticed him first. The alien's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed. "What is this?" he asked as Susan approached. "Why is your cleaning human dressed this way?" Drex looked at John more carefully. "This is the one from the other night, the nobody." Susan smiled coldly. "Allow me to introduce Captain John Miller, formerly of United States Military Intelligence, specialist in communication analysis and deception detection." The room went quiet. All eyes turned to John. "This is most irregular," Krell said. "We were not informed of new members joining your delegation." "Captain Miller has been part of our team all along," Susan said. "He's been studying you quite carefully." John stepped forward and spoke in perfect Zarlaxian, using the formal tones of their military language. "Your deception has failed, Commander Drex. We know of the 3 worlds you destroyed. We know of your plans for Earth." Drex stood up so quickly. His chair fell backward. He spoke rapidly to the other aliens in their language, but John understood every word. "How does he know our speech? How does he know of the other worlds?" John switched back to English. "We know about the compound you plan to put in our water tonight. We know about the weapons on your ships. We know everything." Krell turned to the president. "This is outrageous. This servant is lying." The president's face was hard. "Captain Miller is one of our most decorated intelligence officers. I believe him over you." "And I have proof," John said. He nodded to Dr. Taylor, who activated a screen on the wall. It showed the alien translation software with the deceptive code highlighted. "You've been lying to us from the beginning. Your translator changes your words to hide your true intentions." The aliens began speaking rapidly among themselves. The human guests started to murmur in concern. John looked at the Zarlaxians. For 3 years he had hidden from the world, blaming himself for past failures. But now, as he stood tall in his uniform, he felt his old strength returning. The nobody had become somebody again, and he was ready to save his world. The room was filled with tension as Commander Drex rose to his full height. He was nearly 8 feet tall and looked down at John with cold eyes. "This human speaks out of turn," Drex said. His voice was no longer smooth and friendly. It had a sharp edge now. "He insults the honor of the Zarlaxian Empire." John stood his ground. "Is it an insult to speak the truth? Your empire has destroyed 3 worlds before ours. You call it resource extraction. The people who live there called it death." The human delegates looked shocked. Some began to stand up, ready to leave. "Show them," Susan said to Dr. Taylor. Dr. Taylor pressed a button on her tablet. The large screen on the wall changed to show images of 3 different planets. They were barren and cracked, with huge mining pits covering their surfaces. "These images were in your ship's databanks," John said. "You kept them as records of your success. How did you access our private files?" Krell demanded. John allowed himself a small smile. "I'm not just a nobody who cleans floors. Before that, I specialized in getting information people wanted to keep secret." Drex made a sound like a growl. "These accusations are false. We came to Earth in peace." Then explain this, John said. He nodded to Dr. Taylor again. The screen changed to show a chemical formula. Next to it was an image of a clear liquid. This is the special drink you plan to serve tonight, John said. We found it in your kitchen area. It contains a compound that affects human brain chemistry. It makes people more trusting and less able to make decisions. One of the human scientists in the room stood up. I've analyzed this formula. Captain Miller is right. This would essentially drug everyone in this room. The president's face was red with anger. Is this true, Ambassador Krell? Krell looked at Drex, who gave a small nod. It was merely a calming agent, Krell said, to make the negotiations proceed more smoothly. By drugging us without our knowledge? Susan asked. That's not how Earth conducts diplomacy, Drex stepped forward. His hand moved to a device on his belt. Perhaps we have been too patient with your primitive species. The Zarlaxian Empire does not need permission to take what it needs. I wouldn't do that, John said quietly. He pointed to the ceiling. Everyone looked up. The decorative panels had been removed, revealing armed soldiers pointing weapons at the alien delegation. Earth is not defenseless, John said. And we're not as primitive as you think. Drex's hand moved away from his belt. You would threaten diplomats? This is against all galactic laws. Funny, John said. We recorded you last night talking about how you plan to take our resources by force if necessary. That doesn't sound very diplomatic to me. The other world leaders were standing now, moving away from the aliens. Security personnel moved in to protect them. You've been planning this from the beginning, John continued. Your ships are positioned to attack our major cities. Your diplomats are actually military commanders. The treaty you wanted us to sign would have given you legal rights to everything on Earth. How could you know all this? Krell asked. His voice sounded less confident now. John stepped closer to the aliens. He spoke in their language again, using the formal military dialect that only their highest officers were taught. I studied your transmissions for months. I learned your language, your customs, your military codes. While you laughed at the nobody cleaning your floors, I was learning all your secrets. The aliens looked at each other nervously. John had spoken words that only their military elite should know. The president stepped forward. Ambassador Krell, Commander Drex, in light of this evidence, Earth is canceling all negotiations with the Zarlaxian Empire. You and your delegation will return to your ship immediately. And if we refuse? Drex asked. Susan smiled coldly. Then you'll be our guests in a different kind of facility. One with much stronger security. Drex looked at the armed soldiers. Then at John. Something like respect showed in his alien eyes. This is not over, he said. The Empire does not forgive such insults. Neither does Earth, the president replied. Security teams moved in to escort the aliens out. As they passed John, Drex paused. You, he said, the nobody. You have made a powerful enemy today, John looked him in the eyes. And you have underestimated a world of nobodies. That was your mistake. As the aliens were led away, the room erupted in chaos. World leaders demanded explanations. Military commanders called their bases to raise alert levels. Scientists examined the evidence on the screens. John stood quietly in the middle of it all. He felt strange in his uniform, like he was playing a part in someone else's story. Susan approached him. Good work, Captain. You just saved the planet. We're not safe yet, John said. Their ships are still in orbit. They have weapons we can't match. Then what do we do? Susan asked. We need to talk to them again, John said. But this time, we set the terms. The president joined them. Captain Miller, I owe you an apology. If we had dismissed you as just a janitor, we might have lost everything. John shook his head. No apology needed, sir. I chose that job for a reason. Sometimes the best place to watch is from the shadows. Well, you're not in the shadows anymore, the president said. I need you to lead our response to this crisis. You understand these aliens better than anyone. John felt a moment of panic. He had been comfortable being invisible. Now all eyes were on him. Sir, I'm not sure I'm the right person. I am, the president said firmly. General Rogers told me about Nigeria, about how you've been punishing yourself for years over what happened there. It's time to stop hiding, Captain. Susan put her hand on John's shoulder. The world needs you, John. I need you. John looked around the room. The people who had walked past him for years without seeing him were now watching him, waiting for him to speak, to lead. What about the aliens? Dr. Taylor asked, joining them. They're returning to their ship. They could attack at any moment. They won't, John said. Not yet. They're going to report to their superiors first? That gives us time. Time for what? The president asked. John's mind was already racing ahead, forming a plan. Time to prepare our defense. And time to send them a message they won't expect. The president nodded. Whatever you need, Captain Miller. Earth is counting on you. John straightened his uniform. For 3 years, he had been running from responsibility, from the pain of his past failures. But now, facing a threat to his entire world, he found his old strength returning. Get me access to their communication frequency, he said. I want to send a message directly to their homeworld. As the room cleared out and people rushed to carry out orders, John sat down at a computer. The nobody who cleaned floors was gone. In his place sat Captain John Miller, the man who had just become Earth's best hope for survival. 3 days had passed since the aliens returned to their ship. 3 tense days of waiting. The Zarlaxian vessels still hung in Earth's orbit, silent and threatening. Inside the United Earth Space Command headquarters, John Miller sat at a large desk that had been set up for him in the main control room. Screens surrounded him, showing the alien ships and data from Earth's defense systems. He had barely slept since the confrontation at the dinner. General Susan Rogers brought him a cup of coffee. Any response to our message? John shook his head. Nothing yet. But they received it. Our sensors confirmed that. The message John had sent to the Zarlaxian homeworld had been bold. He had spoken directly to their high command. Bypassing Drex and Krell, he had laid out everything Earth knew about their operations on other planets. Then he had made an offer, leave Earth in peace, and humans would not share this information with other worlds in the galaxy. Do you think it will work? Susan asked. I don't know, John admitted, but it was better than starting a war we might not win. Dr. Beth Taylor hurried into the room. Captain Miller, we're detecting movement from the main ship. A small vessel is launching. John stood up. Is it an attack craft? No, Beth said. It's a diplomatic shuttle. The same kind they used when they first arrived. John and Susan exchanged. Looks, they want to talk, Susan said. Or it's a trick, John cautioned. The president joined them, having been called when the alien ship started moving. What do you think, Captain Miller? Should we allow them to land? John thought for a moment. Yes, but not here. Somewhere more open where we can have full security in place. And I want to meet them alone first. Absolutely not, the president said. It's too dangerous. Sir, I know these aliens now. They respect strength and direct confrontation. If we send a large delegation, they'll see it as weakness hiding behind numbers. Susan nodded. He's right, Mr. President, and Captain Miller has proven he can handle himself with them. The president still looked uncertain. What if they try? To kill you? John smiled slightly. Then you'll know their answer is no. 2 hours later, John stood alone in an open field. Military forces were hidden in the trees around the area, but from the outside, it looked like he was completely alone. The alien shuttle descended slowly from the sky. It was smaller than before, sleek and silver. It landed softly on the grass about 50 feet from where John stood. The door opened, and a single alien emerged. It wasn't Krell or Drex. This alien was older, with pale blue skin marked with lines around the eyes and mouth. It wore ornate armor with symbols John recognized as marks of high rank in the Zarlaxian military. The alien approached John slowly. It stopped 10 feet away. I am Grand Commander Vorn of the Zarlaxian Empire, it said in perfect English. You are the human called Miller. Captain John Miller, John confirmed. Thank you for coming, Grand Commander. Your message was unexpected, Vorn said. No species has ever detected our true intentions before. No species has ever spoken to us as equals. Humans are full of surprises, John said. Vorn studied him. You were the cleaning human, the nobody who was beneath notice. Yes, yet you were always watching, always listening. You learned our language, our codes, our plans. Vorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. Drex is most upset about this. I imagine he is, John said. You threatened to share information about our activities with other worlds, Vorn said, his tone growing serious. This would damage our operations on many planets. Yes, it would. Why did you not simply attack our ships? Your world has nuclear weapons. You could have destroyed at least some of our vessels, John looked the alien in the eyes. Because I've seen enough death, I wanted to try words first. Vorn seemed to consider this an interesting approach. Different from the other worlds we have encountered. We are different, John said. We value life, including yours. But we will fight if we must. Vorn reached into a pocket in his armor. John tensed, but the alien merely pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared between them. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue. My scientists have studied your world, Vorn said. The resources we sought here can be found elsewhere. Perhaps not as abundant, but sufficient. You saying you'll leave us in peace? John asked. I'm saying that the cost of taking your world might be higher than the gain, Vorn replied. Your species is ... unpredictable, and nobody becomes a formidable opponent. A cleaning human understands. Complex military codes. Your leaders listen to those of low status when they speak truth. That's one of our strengths, John said. Yes, a strength we did not anticipate. Vorn closed his hand, and the image of Earth disappeared. I have made my decision. The Zarlaxian Empire will withdraw from your solar system. We will not return. In your lifetime. John felt a wave of relief but kept his face calm. And the other worlds you've been exploiting. That is not your concern, Vorn said sharply. It is if we're to keep our side of the bargain, John replied. We won't share what we know about your activities if you leave those worlds in peace too, Vorn's eyes narrowed. You push your advantage, human. I push for what's right, John said. That's what humans do. For a long moment the alien was silent. Then he said, Very well. We will cease our extraction operations on the worlds you identified. But this agreement is between our peoples only. You will not interfere in Zarlaxian affairs elsewhere. Agreed, John said. As long as you don't harm other worlds the way you plan to harm ours. Vorn stepped closer. He was much taller than John, but for once John didn't feel small. You have earned the respect of the Zarlaxian Empire, Captain John Miller, Vorn said. Few beings in the galaxy can claim such an honor. I didn't do it for honor, John said. I did it because it was my duty. Perhaps that is why you succeeded where others failed, Vorn said. He raised his hand in what appeared to be a salute. We will depart within one of your Earth days. The treaty ending hostilities will be transmitted to your leaders within the hour. Safe journey, Grand Commander, John said, returning the salute. Vorn turned and walked back to his shuttle. At the door he paused and looked back. The nobody, who became somebody, we will remember you, John Miller. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him. The shuttle lifted off silently and rose into the sky. John watched until it was just a speck, then disappeared. Only then did he allow himself to breathe normally again. He touched the communicator in his ear. It's done, he said. They're leaving. Later. That evening there was a small celebration at UESC headquarters. The president had announced to the world that the alien threat was over. Earth was safe. The Zarlaxian ships had already begun moving out of orbit. John sat quietly in a corner, watching the others celebrate. He still wore his uniform, but he had removed the jacket. He felt tired, but at peace. Susan found him and sat down. You should be enjoying the party, Captain. You're the hero of the hour. John shook his head. I'm no hero. I just did what needed to be done. What will you do now? Susan asked. The president mentioned a promotion. General Miller has a nice ring to it. John smiled. I don't think so. I've had enough of the spotlight. Back to being a janitor then? Susan asked with a raised eyebrow. No, not that either. John looked around the room at the scientists, soldiers, and leaders who had come together to save their world. I was thinking of starting a new program, training people to understand alien communications, cultures, intentions. We got lucky this time. We might not be so lucky next time. Susan nodded. Sounds like important work. Work that only you could do. Will you support it? John asked. Every step of the way, Susan promised. She stood and offered her hand. Come on. The president wants to thank you properly. John took her hand and stood. As they walked across the room, people turned to look at him, not with the blindness of before when he had been invisible. Now they saw him. The nobody had become somebody important, but John knew the truth. He had always been somebody. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one nobody notices until they do.